Leveling Up Season 2, Episode 3, Mentoring in Games and the Gaming Industry. I'm VP Quinn, and this is our Chief Operations Officer Josh. And we are joined by Sean Patrick Fannon of Evil Beagle Games. We'll let Sean introduce himself to our audience in just a moment, but first, let us tell you where you can find high-level games out in the world. You can find high-level games on all our media platforms and social media accounts, from our Facebook page, conveniently titled High Level Games, our Twitter account at HLG_corporate, our YouTube channel, also called High Level Games, and finally our Twitch channel, High_level_games, all lowercase. This is where you come in, Josh.
No idea what is going.
Yep, we can hear you now. You were quiet and then you're back.
So there is a massive feedback loop where I'm hearing, I'm hearing things from about 2 minutes ago.
That's probably because you're hearing the stream.
I shouldn't be hearing the stream, though. Okay. Sorry about that.
Yay, technology.
That was crazy. Quinn, I'm sorry, but can we start over?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. This is going to be weird for anyone that's watching us live, but I don't think there is anybody. So whenever you're ready.
Is it too early for me to start drinking?
No, not at all. All right, let's start again.
Of course, the Canadian would say that. I love
as
Canada.
long as it's maple syrup. Welcome to Leveling Up Season 2, Episode 3, Mentoring in Games and the Gaming Industry. I'm VP Quinn, and this is our Chief Operations Officer, Josh. We are joined by Sean Patrick Fannon of Evil Beagle Games. We'll let Sean introduce himself to our audience in just a moment, but first, let us tell you where you can find high-level games out in the world. You can find high-level games on all our media platforms and social media accounts, from our Facebook page, conveniently titled High Level Games, our Twitter account at HLG_corporate, our YouTube channel, also called High Level Games, and finally our Twitch channel, High_level_games, all lowercase.
First, I want to thank Caffeinated Conquests for playtesting our recent Storyteller's Vault products. You can catch their videos of Things Go Southy and Obelisk of Oak Island on YouTube at Caffeinated Conquests. You can also find the Inclusive Gaming Network, which I'm the administrator of, on Twitter at @inclusive_games and Facebook at facebook.com/Inclusive Gaming Network. You can also check out our website, www.rorpg.com.
We have a Patreon page where you can support the many blog creators that make stuff for highlevelgames.ca. For only $5 a month, you can get access to our content free as we release it. That includes a Savage Worlds version of A Cat's Meow, a one-page adventure that includes information on a new species you can use in your game, the Khatulim. Sean, please tell our listeners about where they can find you and what's going on in the world of Evil Beagle Games right now.
Well, good morning, guys. Evil Beagle Games just went on full LLC, as a matter of fact. I have been doing a lot more adulting lately than I ever anticipated, because opening up credit union accounts and assigning, linking up to PayPals and all that kind of stuff. We just brought on Len Pimentel and folded Lakeside Games in. He is the vice president and our business manager. And he and I are continue to work on Prowls and Paragons Ultimate Edition and a whole bunch of stuff with that, the whole superhero side of things. Plus, he's working on his TNT and Magnum Fury product lines and a few other things with that. Michael Serbrook is our Chief Operations Officer and is also working on all the Michael Serbrook Presents material for all kinds of different systems, including Savage Worlds, D&D 5e, Hero System, Pathfinder. Bill Keys, aka To Evil Bunny, guy who did Widening Gyre. He is our art director and director of production, and he just launched Cities of Wonder. We just launched our first entry for that, system neutral cities and urban locales that can be dropped into any kind of game we're full of people and stories and all kinds of really great stuff. And he's going to be doing a bunch of that, but he's also going to be bringing some other people for that. And we're all working together on other projects. Of course, they're very much in support of the big stuff that I'm still continuing to work on. The huge thing there being Freedom Squadron, which is sort of the G.I. Joe love letter that we were working on based on the Venom Assault board game by Spyglass Games, and I'm still partnered with those guys. We have a huge Kickstarter planned for 10 March 2018. And because we're making it very retail facing, thanks to the involvement of John Stevens, who's on the Game Manufacturers Association Gamma retail board, John's helped us move that forward. So it's going to be we're going to do some really interesting experimental stuff with how to do a Kickstarter that's very, very retail friendly. And we're doing some new things along those lines. So you guys keep an eye out for that. But we've already been approached by Alliance, the game distributing network, the largest distributor network in tabletop gaming. They've already approached us about, hey, we really want this product. We're going to give you some advertising. We want to support this. And I'm like, very exciting. So that's going to be a Savage Worlds driven thing. And we just got a few other things going on there. So Evil Beagle, we're really shooting to get next level with the company and our number of products that we'll have on the digital shelves and on physical shelves as well. So there's that. I've got Sean'sPickOfTheDay.com, which I'm still doing, which is every weekday I pick a product. I've been doing theme weeks now these days. So I'll pick a theme and I'll pick products along that theme, or sometimes I'll spotlight a creator. I've got a Patreon myself, Sean Patrick Fannon. So if you just search Sean Patrick Fannon on Patreon, people can get involved at different levels to see all the Freedom Squadron stuff that's happening, all the Prowls and Paragon stuff I'm working on. There may be a unofficial Savage Star Wars thing I created that's on there just for my Patreon supporters. So some pretty cool stuff happening there. And of course, just very active on Facebook these days. I've been doing these cute little daily gamer affirmations. I don't know. I just started doing them and people really like them. So I'll take something that's relevant to my current personal experiences and I'll post a thing out to share that people seem to get something out of it, create some great conversation. Try to use Facebook in a positive, creative, and inspiring way. So that's the stuff I'm up to these days.
Awesome.
Oh, and I'm still overseeing this. I'm still the brand manager for Savage Rifts for Pinnacle Entertainment, and I'm actually working with some great writers and designers that are bringing the next set of books out. So that's still a thing going on. So sorry I didn't. Savage Rifts is still a thing. Yes, a big thing. So I forgot. I should say that. Go ahead. Guys?
So Sean, Josh is missing his cues, so I'll take in. Sean, what's going on in your gaming life right now? Like the non-work version of just playing in the hobby that we all love.
There's not a work aspect to this. I do get teased about that frequently. That it all seems like it's part of the work for me. But that's because it all really is. I do what I love. There's no question about that. And yes, it is work. And sometimes it's, but it's still what's inside me to do. So a lot of the fun stuff does tie in. However, to that point, actually, it has been really interesting because Corinne is running her crew campaign, the crew, Savage Worlds. I helped her develop the mechanics aspects of it. And we just recently did a new version of the character creation rules and stuff using some of the ideas that I created for Freedom Squadron, which of course are inspired by the stuff that I did for Savage Rifts. So it is constantly feeding itself, but the idea of vocation frameworks and cool charts that you can roll on and stuff like that is something that's becoming sort of an Evil Beagle house style where Savage Worlds is concerned. Is like this is a Savage Worlds game where you're going to have a cool package of things you can start with that define what kind of character you are in the setting. And then you have these cool charts you can roll on that give you extra cool ability. So the characters end up being a little bit juicier than a standard starting character, but they're fun. So Corinne's running the crew, which is basically modern day supernatural. It's kind of like all the different television shows and some of the movies that deal with it's the modern day, but there's supernatural stuff happening. They kind of mishmash that into one place, and you are aware and capable people who may or may not be fully human, who are part of an organization that's both to deal with the actual monsters out there, but also to protect the supernatural community from the mundane world that finds out about them and maybe doesn't deal as well with them. So you sort of stand in the line between. And Corinne's been running that. We've been having a good time.
So that sounds like a little bit of a mix between like Shadowhunters and Supernatural and Buffy and all that sort of stuff, right?
Exactly that. Exactly that. It is a mashup of exactly all that, and intentionally so.
Cool.
Ed Doolittle, good friend of ours locally, is actually running a Prowls and Paragons superhero campaign so that I could actually play. I like begged, and he said yes, and it's been going on. I've been having a great time playing by sort of Superman motif character reliant in that one. And that's actually turned into a really, really great campaign. Some fantastic players. You're starting to see the elements of what I've always thought would make a great superhero campaign, which is more than just we get together and beat up bad guys. There's all the interconnected stories and kind of the soap opera aspects as well. And then, the high level questions you have to ask yourself of, what does it mean when you have these powers and you can change the world? Like we ended up getting control of the entire nuclear arsenal of the entire planet at one point. And we're still sort of wrestling with the results of that and what we did. And are we ever going to return control of that to anybody? Or are we just going to no, we're just going to leave them out by Mars. And I'm sorry, guys, you just can't have them. So there's some interesting stuff going on there. I am running Savage Star Wars right now. Matter of fact, Monday night for Monday Night Savages. So that's, it's Star Wars using the Savage Worlds rules, which people do find interesting because I worked on the FFG Star Wars rules, but I worked primarily on the content, and I love the content, of course. I'm very connected to that, but the rule set isn't my cup of tea. I really think Savage Worlds works great for Star Wars. Too bad we can't get that license. So I'm setting it in Old Republic, and actually there's in the MMO, if you're familiar with the online game, and I don't play a lot of online games, but I pay attention to the Star Wars stuff just because. And they did this whole thing about the Eternal Empire. It's set in the early Old Republic days, and I'm running my campaign based on that. And everybody's been having a really good time with that, and that's been fun. That's the big stuff right there. Some other campaigns are starting to come around and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I do a lot of gaming. There's no question. There's a lot of that is a huge part. People are sometimes surprised at how much gaming I do. It's like, dude, I mean, that's your work. Why would you do so much of it? And I'm surprised that other people who work in the industry don't play more games.
Right.
That always surprises me because I think I'm a better creator when I'm experiencing lots of different ways to play and different settings and different rules. So, I mean, I am actually trying to play other games too. I'm open to people running something that I don't normally play. So that I can learn more about it. In some cases, I learn a lot about a game system and it's just not going to work for me. Apocalypse World Engine. So, I mean, I'm still waiting for someone to run an Apocalypse World Engine game that doesn't just make me go, because I've not had that experience yet. I keep hearing it. Supposedly it's a great game, but it's just not.
I'll tell you that I've struggled with that particular engine a few times, and I feel like reading the book is a good thing to do for the Apocalypse World book, even second edition. It's a good thing to do for any GM because in some places it's kind of a master class in challenging your preconceptions to running a game. That being said, the only one that I've really had fun with was Night Witches, and yeah.
This sounds like a challenge. Maybe that is a challenge that I will have to undertake at some point because I do like the system, but I haven't played it. I haven't run it, so maybe something I should dive into at some point.
The mechanics of it. There's a place where the interface happens, where you're trying to do things in the. I mean, storytelling is storytelling, right? And the concept is really strong, but the actual physical and emotional experience of interfacing and trying to accomplish things, just utter failure. I mean, just nothing but misery. It's like we tend to get vapor locked. We're like, we don't want to do anything because every time we do, that's the only way the GM gets to throw anything in. But it feels like all we're doing is empowering the game master to screw us over. It doesn't feel like a narrative exchange. It feels like if I don't find a way to hyper cheese my okay, so I'm everything I do is going to be based on these abilities because if I try to do anything else, it's going to be complete total failure. If you don't play the character within the very, very narrow band that the place that your playbook or whatever it is gives you, If you try to do anything outside of, I hit things, or I pick locks, and if you try to do anything other than picking locks, right, because it's the one thing you may be good at, suddenly you screw the group out. You screw the group and you screw the story, because it's just bad crap's going to happen. And other people are telling me like, no, you're enhancing the fiction. It doesn't feel like I'm enhancing the fiction. It just feels like I'm enhancing my sense of failure. I know that's not what's supposed to be, but that's what it feels like.
Right. That sounds problematic.
I know that's not what the show was supposed to be about, guys. Sorry, we got off on a tangent there.
That's an interesting tangent, though, that I maybe not dig into right now, but I definitely want to like think about it a little bit more. Quinn, because I missed my cue earlier, which you pointed out so well, what are you doing in your gaming right now?
So my gaming group, I think I might have mentioned this before. I challenged my gaming group because in the many decades of role-playing games that we've played, there's never been really a time when we haven't had at least one D&D game going. And so I challenged my group, and this was not an easy sell, to take a year off of D&D. And
wow.
And so what we've done is all the games we're playing right now are non-D&D games, right? So I am running a Numenera game right now in the Cypher game system, so I'm really enjoying playing that. We've just kind of started that. And that has been super fun. We have one player in it that has never kind of done tabletop role-playing games before, and he's a huge board game guy and an engineer, so you can kind of watch him behind his eyes trying to game the system, and it's a fun thing trying to describe to him, well, yeah, but that's not the point, right? And so it's interesting playing that out. Like, yes, that's awesome, and you should do that from time to time, but also occasionally do this other thing. I also am playing in a Savage Rifts campaign that we have done. My group backed the highest back level of the Kickstarter, and so we haven't had an opportunity to sit down and play it for a long time, but we sat down and we're finally playing it now, and I made a mind melter named Jen, who is super fun. I took the hindrances heroic, and also she had to have a quirk, and we had to decide what the quirk was, and the quirk for her was unrelentingly positive.
Oh my God.
And so she's a young, like 18-year-old woman who is just brand new to the Tomorrow Legion, and everybody else are all jaded veterans. And I'm just like super positive. But in my backstory, I have tons and tons of really traumatic, awful things that have happened. And so my character has been described as a ticking time bomb for everybody else. Because I do have the ability to like reach into your brain and steal your thoughts and like all of these fun things if I so choose, but I'm just super positive. And I figure that my positivity and heroic outlook is that I refuse to see the evil in the world, and I have to stop it and control the world, which is
so you're terrifying. A super villain in the you're a master villain in the making, is what you're saying.
I'm wondering if that's the case. We'll see how it plays out.
Now, what's really interesting about that, I don't know if you guys know the story, but when I was at Grand Con, and I want to say it was early last year up in Michigan, pretty sure it was either last year or the year before. God, it might have been the year before. Time just goes Swiss cheese brain. Anyway, so me and Kevin Simbita were both guests at that Grand Con. And I got Kevin to sit down, and I found out as I got him to sit down that he had never played in his own world.
I heard this.
He'd of course run it constantly, right? But he'd never been a player. No one else had ever run Rifts for him. So his first experience playing as a player character in a Rifts setting game was playing Savage Rifts with me.
Yeah.
Wow. And he played a Mind Melter. That's the thing that blew everybody's mind, is he chose a Mind Melter. I mean, he's the guy who like created the Glitter Boy, and he played a Mind Melter. So that's
exciting. It is fascinating. My game group has been playing on and off Rifts since like the 90s, right? So We have enjoyed the game, but we have had the same experience where we're really having fun. The rules. I can't take this anymore. Let's play something else. And so when Savage Rifts came out, we were excited to play it in this particular system. And the last thing that I'm playing is Star Trek Adventures by Modiphius, which is exciting. And what we're doing is we're streaming that on Monday nights on our Twitch channel as a raw audio version. I've brought on 3 writers that are helping me to write a 12-episode season, each episode being kind of a mini adventure in its own right. And then I have a producer, and what we're doing is we're taking the audio from these interactions and we're doing as professionally edited and soundcasted radio play, actual play as we can. That will be released as a podcast afterwards. So the first episode, I think, is just the beta edit has been released or put up in our internal files. So I'm about to listen to that after I'm done this and see how it's played out. It's been really exciting. We have 12 episodes that we've skeletoned out, and one of them is a very special mirror universe episode. So we're very excited about that because I'm a huge Star Trek nerd. Star Trek is like Star Wars, but for people who can read. So I...
Wow. Wow. Wow.
What you said.
I don't actually believe that, but I enjoy seeing the looks on people's faces when I say that.
Cut you.
Well, I'm not sure we can be friends much longer, Quinn.
I love Star Wars. Don't send letters. But I just like the reaction I get. I'm sorry. I'm not usually a troll. I just saw the opportunity and went for it. All right, Josh, what's going on in your gaming life?
Wow, following that. Okay.
I can't even, right?
Right. I'm running 2 games actively right now. I'm running a Chariot digital LARP. Chariot is a system created by Tara Clapper over at the Geek Initiative, and it is a LARP utilizing digital platform. So we actually use Hangouts for the run that I am hosting. I am a captain of a ship of a group of people that are leaving Earth because Earth is in peril, and we are going on a generational ship to create a new home for humanity or groups of humanity. We are effectively interacting over this sort of platform prior to leaving, so we get to know who like the main crew members are. It's a game that deals with grief a lot, despair, and the possibility of hope leaving the planet as well. So it's definitely been very, very interesting. We are going to be running Chariot into next year as well, but I'm running a short run that is not broadcast on Twitch like the rest of our runs are at the moment. Closer to home, I am running a Changing Breeds game for Werewolf 20th Anniversary Edition, focused on the different Fera rather than just werewolves, which is effectively a murder mystery that is the goal is to make it a very small space, because most of my World of Darkness games tend to be very, very large in scope. Like, I'm an international sort of person when I usually run these games. So my goal is to try to keep the players in New England and not have them leave their town that they're in as much as possible. They've already traveled like 4,000 miles in the game, though, so I may be failing at my mission, but that's the goal anyway, is to try to keep them local and try to keep them focused on that area. A game that I do have coming up next year is another digital LARP called Mythos Inc., which is going to be running in January, and that is a game about corporations, Cthulhu, and trying to make sure that you get eaten first if you're going to get eaten. So that's what I'm doing for gaming right now.
That sounds amazing.
I can't even. Of course, you're talking about you want to keep the guys local. They're already walking. Was it like 8 times what the Scottish twins were singing about? You know.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess we get back into the topic of the game, and that is the responsibility of people to mentor and to kind of bring in new gamers. I guess let's start small. One of the challenges that I've definitely seen for a lot of role-playing groups is, how do you find new gamers? Like, what do you even look at for when finding new gamers?
Are we talking about, actively recruiting or
Yeah,
just
actively recruiting, either new for your group or new entirely.
wow. See, the thing with me is, it's been a long time since I've ever been like, I'm starting fresh, I'm looking brand new, and I'm just going out and saying, hey, I need to find gamers. My situation has often been, I show up in a new place and word gets around that I'm there, and it's very, very nice. People are like, oh my God, hey, come game with us. And I start, I get a chance to go, play with some folks and stuff like that. I do, for me, I'm very much an extrovert. I'm, very social, and I do go out and I do other things. And I frequently talk about what I do at parties or at gatherings of different kinds, or even just, talking to people about business of other types and stuff like that. And it's interesting because, I will meet plenty of non-gamer type people who are like, oh, I've always heard about that. It always seemed kind of interesting. I never get a chance to do that. And if I get a sense of enthusiasm about the idea from that person, if I get a sense that there's a childlike wonder in that person that tells me, as we're talking about this, they seem engaged with the idea, right? Not about the mechanics or anything else. It's and sometimes, oftentimes I'll be like, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if I have time to figure that out. And I'm like, you don't have to figure anything out if you actually have an instinct to tell stories, an instinct to pretend to be somebody else. That's all that matters. The rest of it I can make work. And for people for whom that seems to click, I will continue to encourage them. So, no, seriously, if you've got some time, we could set up a game sometime. Like, I'll tell you what, we just want to run a one shot one time and see how that goes for you, and see if you really enjoy it. Because if I sense that the childlike wonder kind of thing, right, the desire to sort of return to playing pretend that we remember as kids, if that seems to be something that is in that person, then I'll grab a hold of that, like a little tiny ember, and go, blow into it and get them to come sit down and play. If I get a sense of, I just, games. Oh yeah. So do you mean like Monopoly? Because I really like Monopoly a lot. Okay, that's probably not. If Monopoly is their idea of high gaming, I'm not sure I can reach them. I'm not sure they're a person I'm going to be able to really get to open up to the idea of, no, actually, this is a game where you're not trying to win. Because I don't know that that's even going to be a concept they can put their head around.
Yeah, it is interesting to me. Like, I definitely have kind of built and rebuilt gaming groups over my life. Right now, I'm in a good space where I've played with mostly the same people for a long time, with the exception of this one person I was talking about earlier. But I definitely have a rule when I'm bringing people in is, would I want to hang out with them if we weren't gaming?
Boom. Mic drop. Double mic drop, actually. You're absolutely right on that one.
Right? Because, I mean, I know I grew up in a small town, well, technically a village in southern Saskatchewan, and even when I moved from there, it was in a smaller community, and there weren't very many gamers, and over and over and over again, you ended up playing just because you needed the gaming fix, sometimes with people that you didn't like. And I've just gotten too old and crotchety for that stupid shit, and I can't. There's no way that I'll spend my valuable, precious time with people that I wouldn't otherwise like to hang out with. Life is too short, and we're living in the golden age of gaming right now, in my opinion, and we should be finding people who are awesome to play with.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that for me, that's about finding new gamers. And when we bring new gamers into our group, we have a system set up where we have them come and watch what we're doing for one session. And when we do that, we let them watch and they can crack jokes at the table and whatever. And then after that, we as a group discuss whether or not this person is a good fit. And if even one person says, you know, I'm not sure, we veto that person. Because for me, the gaming groups that we have are kind of sacred to me, right? And I don't want anybody to feel like they're no longer comfortable there, right? And so if one person's going to come in and ruin what we've set up for that person, that's not a risk I'm willing to take.
I'm in a different space because I'm running public LARPs. You know, I'm doing them online at the moment, but I have run and participated in LARP in the public, as it were, as well, quite frequently. So I don't think we can be as selective about the player base, particularly in those sorts of games. I've also traveled. I gamed in Iraq. I gamed in Germany. I gamed in New Hampshire. I've gamed down in New York. I gamed in, you know, Washington, D.C., where I live now. I've had to be a little bit less selective about my people. So I think that is a great system if you've got a really established group that you're trying to do that sort of kind of funneling for. I've had to be a little bit more open to and willing to bring other people in. So I don't want to say anything negative to that, but if anyone has anything to add.
I live in both worlds, right? Because as a professional who gets invited to conventions all the time, in fact, I've really got to work hard on not going to as many conventions next year. You know, I'm constantly obligated to run for brand new people, and make them as included as anybody else. I run multiple tables at every convention I go to. I sometimes run gigantic big things like Tacticon this past year. I ran for 25 people in a gigantic big event, and
Wow.
we're shooting for a bigger one at Genghis Khan coming up in February. There's techniques, right? Co-GMs and table captains and things like that, but big epic events that include lots of people, and then you know, multiple smaller, you know, 6-person, 7-person tables and things like that. So I am very much who wants to sit down and play. Now, you know, then we can get into a whole nother conversation, which is not really what this is about, but you know, how do you manage tables where you have personalities that don't quite work, and you know, what do you do to protect people from bad personalities or bad actors? And those are serious and genuine concerns. And so I understand that instinct, and I will, right? If there's a person who's causing other people to be uncomfortable, I will protect that table. I will protect the other players. You know, I'll pull the person quietly aside and say, I don't think this is a good fit for you, or you're going to need to back away from the sexual jokes, please, or that kind of thing, right?
Right.
But for the home game situation, you know, I understand and appreciate what you're saying, Quinn. And if it works for you and your crew, then that's absolutely what you should do. I am both more egalitarian and more authoritarian at the same time, which is really, really weird, I suppose. If a person shows up at my table, I do not ask them to watch. I don't think asking someone to watch as their first exposure to gaming is a good idea, because that will be boring as all hell for most people. I want them to actually have the experience of playing, you know, bearing in mind that usually what I'm talking about are new players, right? If I've invited somebody to try gaming for the first time, I don't want their first experience to be, well, I'm sitting around watching, I'm not actually engaged. That's not going to capture their imagination in the same way. Getting them to actually roll dice and feel excited about doing something for the first time, that's what's going to engage their imagination. Not watching other people look at their character sheets and work through stuff. And yes, I say authoritarian because I'll make the decision. If I personally think I can make it work with this person at the table, you know, I will make that judgment call. I have been doing this since 1977. I've been working professionally since 85. So yeah, perhaps there's a bit of arrogance in there, but I feel like I have a pretty good eye and a pretty good feel for, yeah, I think it's okay for me to invite this. And my players genuinely trust me to make good decisions about that. I mean, I've tried your way. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, hey, do we want to, you know, talk about inviting so-and-so? I say, if you think so, that's fine with us, Sean. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go on with that then. But I will say, that has bit me in the butt sometimes. All right. I'm not going to neg what you said, Quinn, because there have been some times when I have made the call to invite a new person to a table and thought, oh yeah, this person's gonna work out fine, and not realize it just because I get along with that person, because I'm Mr. Inclusive. I'm Mr. Everybody gets to play, as long as you're not a totally horrible person. I try to find the good in everybody. I try to be, because I remember as a kid what it was like not to be included. I remember what it was like to be excluded, to be not liked, to be not welcome, because I was too much the nerd, too much the geek, too much the freak, whatever. So I still think in terms of, I don't want anyone to not be welcome, but
right,
that is fraught with peril. I've had people added to tables where other people were like, I don't feel comfortable with that person. That they creep me out, or look, I just don't like their role-playing style. It's taking away from the table for me. I've had game groups be damaged by those decisions. So that is a viable concern. So getting back to the including new gamers thing, I now tend to think in terms of, I try to learn the social alchemy, right? Outside of the gaming table. I'll look around and go, hey, we all seem to get along with that guy and we have a spot. Well, let's bring that person in. But with new players, it's back to that other thing where, hey, this is a chance to bring something new. And we actually have a real world example right now. One of my very dear friends who we game with all the time, Chris Parks, I started dating this extraordinary young woman, Chelsea, and she's actually interested, but she's never role played before, but she's expressed interest. So we are in that stage of, let's find an opportunity and a table and a time to sit her down and give her a chance to experience it for the first time and see if that's going to work out for her. And then, of course, there's a lot of responsibility that goes into that, because you can make or break someone's experience with gaming with that first session.
Absolutely. What do you think types of things do you do when you find a person that you're like, this person's really interested, they're really involved, they want to come sit at the table? What type of maybe discussions do you have with them, interactions do you have with them to help train them or like mentor them in how gaming works itself?
Well, I tell them to read, all of the books and memorize them, and then I make sure they take a test. I ask them 100 questions about the game mechanics, and if they don't at least get 85%, then the gaming's out for them.
So that's the same as me. Perfect.
And that would be number one on the worst possible thing you can do to encourage a new player.
Yep.
See, the problem for most new players is that the rules aspects intimidate the hell out of them. And it's not even because they're not smart people, right? It's not, one of my earliest examples, one of my earliest experiences with bringing somebody new into gaming was my first wife, who was a systems analyst before that was officially a working, job title. Her degree at the time was called applied mathematics, because they were still getting around to changing those degrees to computer science. That's how far back she was one of the earliest software engineers, and they didn't even know what to call it that at the time. So very brilliant human being, for whom advanced mathematics was her job, her profession, her passion, and yet could not have cared two wits about the mechanics of role-playing, because she didn't want to work while she was playing.
Yeah.
So learning the mechanics was not a thing for her. And we had players early on who would get frustrated and pissy with her, because she was like, look, I'll handle the basics, but don't expect me to delve deep into this. If you want me to play, help me figure out how to put this character together and give me, I'll role play. She was a fantastic role player, fantastic storyteller, great at inhabiting a character. Just didn't want to delve that much into the nitty gritty mechanics. And some of the games we're playing back in the late 80s, early 90s were pretty freaking mechanics heavy. A game like Fate or Savage Worlds or any of the later mechanic systems of now, she'd be totally into, but we didn't have as much of that back then. And the games where she got a lot of crap from players for not being as invested in the mechanics of the game as they were, she walked. She just would not play. She wouldn't play with them. Fortunately, she didn't leave gaming entirely. Of course, she was married to a guy who was pursuing it as a profession, so it was kind of hard for her to walk away from it. And as long as I was patient with her and the players that I brought in were patient, I was fine. But my point is, That's still a thing, right? Even as light as some of the games are compared to that back then, there's still an aspect of those books that is, these are numbers that we use to define how you do things. And if that's what you shove in their face first, you are doing terrible damage, in my opinion. You are really putting a barrier in the way. The first thing you want to do is introduce them to the idea of inhabiting a character and being a part of a world. Give him that magic, right? Give him that sense of, let's talk about who you want to be in this world. Let's talk about the cool things you would like to be able to do. Okay, so that cool thing that you want to be able to do, this is how we express that. And you introduce it that way, and you give them little piece by piece by piece, and you do not worry about how much of the rules they know when they sit down to play, and you don't dump a bunch of rules on their face to begin with, right? You say, okay, oh, these numbers represent your raw ability, and these over here represent the skills and things that you know. Don't worry about the details. Just, you can see the name. If you see fighting, you know what fighting is. If you see knowledge computers, that's what you think that is. That's all you need to be aware of right now. Don't worry about the rest. When we get around to doing something, I'll talk you through how to do that. Layer in those bits of education. Don't front load that, right? Don't deal with anything that they don't have to know mechanically until the moment they have to know it. Let them inhabit the world and the character first. Let them get excited about socially interacting with the other people at the table. Get that magic going. That will get them invested. And once they're invested, at that point, they won't be able to help but care about, oh, so that was a really cool thing that other player just did. How would I do that? And then suddenly they want to learn the mechanics that apply to what their character can do, as opposed to having it shoved in their face.
Yeah, I definitely, when it comes to teaching mechanics, I've taken a very similar tack, in the sense that I just say, don't worry about what's on your sheet. Just tell me what your character wants to do, and I'll walk you through how to do that. And that has been more successful for me than the otherwise. I mean, I've definitely encountered the occasional rare gamer who loves the rules. I used to, years and years ago, and I don't do this anymore because I've grown as a human being, I hope. But I used to have a rule that no one was allowed to touch a rule book for the first year they played. And yeah, it was a long time ago. But the idea was that I just wanted them to inhabit the story and the character, and I said, we'll worry about the mechanics later.
That's a bit authoritarian.
But I mean,
I get
at that time it was what I did. It's no longer what I do. But I didn't do it because for a few players that was too much. They wanted to like dig through everything and find out all the options they could do and learn these things, and that was definitely part of the fun, and it was a learning experience for me. But certainly I didn't want to kind of, not only, I went overboard on the don't shove the mechanics in their face, and went to no one's allowed to touch the mechanics. And it didn't work long term, but it came, I think, from a similar impetus. And today I just say, well, you know, it wouldn't be bad. You know, a lot of games have like a shortened version or a quick start version of the rule setting. I mean, take a look at that if you want. And you know, it might not be a bad idea to take a look through it, but don't worry about understanding things. If you see anything that don't understand, don't worry about it, and we'll deal with it later. And I still kind of do the whole, tell me what you want to do, and we'll walk through how to do it.
My biggest thing now that I realize with the way I do things is the overly helpful other players at the table. Now with my home crew, they're starting to really learn to just whoa, I need to back it up. But I still have to say, hey, one GM, folks, one GM, because other guys at the table who are GMs will, like, all of a sudden they're trying to like throw in there, no, this and this, and I'm like, time out. I'm trying to introduce one thing at a time here, so y'all best back it off and let me handle it. But at convention games, especially, if I have a mix of brand new players and experienced players, I have to get kind of authoritarian about it, because I'll introduce a concept, and I've introduced what I wanted to introduce to that player at the time, and then Mr. Helpful will come in with 3 other things that they'll try to shove in their face all at the same time. As hang on, he's right. Those are really cool ideas, but I don't want you to feel like there's too much being thrown at you at once. So let's just cover this for now. And it's like, don't worry about it, man. I appreciate it, but I got this. So that's the biggest bane to what both you and I are hoping for there, Quinn, is the other Mr. Overly helpful player. And I hate to say it, it's almost always guys. Although occasionally my beloved Corinne, who you guys met earlier, because she's also a GM, she'll show me like, yes, Corinne, you're absolutely right, but not right now, honey. Let me just get this in their face first. So it's the overly helpful player that can really start to overwhelm the new player and get them confused, because suddenly it's multiple voices that are coming at them. And there are people for whom that's socially problematic. You know, they're focused on getting information from one source. Two other sources start coming at them. It doesn't matter how helpful it is. It can socially overwhelm them and shut them down. So you've got to watch out for that.
So not just mechanics, but also in kind of role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games are a weird animal in the world of gaming, in that we've only been doing this thing for a little over 50 years, in the sense of we're going to come together with some kind of a mechanical structure, and we're going to try to tell a story together, this collaborative, creative process. And how do you teach people how to do that and wrap people's heads around that? And I mean, this even goes to if you have a person that's an experienced gamer, but maybe has picked up a few bad habits and comes into your game, how do you help them see maybe a more interesting or a better or another way?
I've got some thoughts on that, but Josh, you were about to throw something in?
At this point, no. Please answer that question.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I thought you had something there, brother. And let me be clear. I just demonstrated a technique. I just demonstrated something that is part of my technique as a GM is and how to mentor new players and how to help newer players who are not as comfortable putting themselves forward. What I just did for Josh is something I do for my table. I will take control and then move focus to the person who's not getting the focus, right? Because you mentioned the bad habits. I'm one of those players who can have that bad habit. I can sit down at a table, and I'm an alpha gamer. I love inhabiting characters. I love being 100% in character as much as possible, and very, very vociferous and very involved and very much a leader, whether I'm meant to play a leader character or not. And I have to watch myself, and GMs have to get used to, like, not letting someone like me eat the table. Well, everybody else just kind of sits back and says, well, we're just doing whatever Sean's character says we're doing. And the role play is going to be all Sean's character. We're all just going to kind of watch the performance. I've been that guy. And I'm not proud of always being that guy. I mean, yes, a person like me can help things happen. A person like me can facilitate things, but a person like me can also too much dominate the experience. So whether I'm a GM or a player, I have now gotten to the point where I'll take my moment and I will talk and I will do stuff, but then I will turn over to someone like Josh or to a brand new player, and I'll go, so what are you thinking? I thought you looked like you had an idea. So I always am trying to, once I've done my thing or had my say, take that spotlight and move it over. And that's not just important to help the new player, but it's also important to help show other players who have those ingrained bad habits how it should be done, right? So, if there's another alpha player at the table and I notice that, whether I'm a player or a GM, I'll be like, hey, that's really cool. Hang on just a second, though, because I wanted to catch what she was going to say, right? And it's very overt. See, there's no – people talk about subtle techniques and things like that. No, we don't have enough time. Get overt. Be direct. I don't start a campaign until I have set everybody down, whether it's a session 0 at Village Inn nearby or the first session before you get started rolling any dice, whatever it takes, or emails or Facebook groups. See, these days I'll use Facebook groups, right? I'll put everybody in a Facebook group that's going to be in a campaign, and I'll start putting information out across to them. And then I will poke them socially, make sure they read that stuff. And it doesn't matter, because we're still going to cover the high points when we sit down that first time. And they're going to know my expectations. I'm going to establish clearly my expectations. This is the style of game I run. I don't do horror. I don't do dark and grim. I don't do PvP. I don't do embedded interpersonal conflict. If it evolves organically from the story and the role play and you guys are handling it, that's fine. But no one's going to come in with a character designed to screw other people's characters over, because that's not what I run. And that's not what I want to establish. That's the expectation at my table. So if that's your style, this is not going to be the game for you, so on and so on and so forth. So establishing those expectations up front, establishing mutual respect, establishing inclusivity. I've started using the X card, especially at conventions, and establishing the understanding that if there's anything happening at the table that is making you uncomfortable, you absolutely have the right to say that this is not good for me and I'd like to go someplace else with the story now. All of those things are considered very important. And it's not just to mentor the new player, but also to bring the player who has their preconceptions about how to play and let them know certain aspects are going to be fine. Certain things that you do are not going to work. So if you're a power gamer who is constantly concerned about how the rules give you the most optimization, you're going to learn at my table that's not the highest priority, right? You can use that to a degree, right? If it's going to give you a chance to do something badass that everybody gets to go, wow, I'm going to support that. But if you're using it to make your character that much more dominant over everybody else's character, that's become a competitive kind of thing. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. And I'm going to make sure you know that. There's no way out but through, as far as I'm concerned. It's got to be straight up. This is a conversation we're having, and I am telling you straight up, this is how it needs to be, please. That's the most effective way to get through, because a lot of people just don't do subtle. They just, were you trying to get a point across to me? I was just hoping they would figure it out. No,
right.
No, I'm just going to tell you, because as you said earlier, Quinn, my time's precious. And the time I have to dedicate to this hobby and to playing outside of all the writing and design I need to do, it needs to be optimized to the point of the most fun. And the only way I'm going to get there is by being overtly courteous, right? I don't mean blunt. See, a lot of people use, well, I'm just being honest to be a blunt asshole. Since you drop some language, you want to drop some language now. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. I think that you can be diplomatic and courteous in the way you say things and still put them directly forward. Absolutely.
I agree with all of that. Actually, I think particularly we've talked about the X card in the past on this show as a method of helping kind of facilitate that. And actually, people say sometimes that it's not a direct feedback system, but I disagree with that. I think it's very direct. It's very like immediately telling someone, hey, there's a problem, let's step off for a moment. And it's a way for working with people that want to do that in a less direct audible way, that they're a little bit more comfortable using something physical to say, hey, like, let's disconnect for a moment. But let's transfer to a slightly different discussion, because we wanted to touch on two different points today with you. So let's talk a little bit about the industry and the RPG industry as a whole. Do you think the industry as a whole has a responsibility to encourage new people to engage in the hobby?
Oh, beyond any question. And that has been true since I started, and I'm sure it was true beforehand. But one of the first goals for me professionally was to be a part of that process. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing altruistic about it. It is directly a matter of survival. We have to have people to sell to. And if we don't encourage new participants in the hobby, if we don't encourage growth in the population of the hobby, we kill ourselves. One of the first people that I worked very, very closely with in this industry is a guy named Ray Greer. Ray Greer is one of the original Hero Games partners. Ray Greer, George McDonald, Steve Peterson. Bruce Harlick was not a partner, but he may as well have been. So you talk about the four there. But Ray was not the lead design guy. He was not the chief mechanics guy. Ray was the business guy. Ray was the one that was like, okay, we're going to be at this convention. We're going to set up a table. We're going to see if we can get the table closest to the entrance of the dealer hall, so we can get right there in people's faces right off the bat. He was always working out those kinds of angles. Dude was a carnival barker showman as much as he was anything. And he taught me a lot early on. And the thing was, it was one of those moments when we met within the first little bit. It's like, boom, total click. We get one another, and we get what each other wants, which is to excite and entertain as many people as possible and get them so excited that they want to then walk over to the table and buy the book.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I wanted them to, because that was my favorite game at the time, and I wanted to support that game. And I knew that it wasn't going to get any more books if people weren't buying the books that were already available for sale. I wanted to write and design, and I knew I wasn't going to have a career as a writer or designer if there wasn't enough people buying the books. So getting more people playing that particular game meant I was supporting what I loved. More to the point, as I got further and further involved in the hobby, it became and remains a passionate crusade of mine to continue to bring people back to the table who left, and to have them bring their kids, and in some cases their grandkids, and to also just keep, you know, getting more and more people excited, because I would like to have enough money to travel. Right now, I have sometimes enough money to fill my gas tank, and you know, but it's changing, right? And more and more people are becoming excited and interested in the kinds of stuff that I do and this kinds of stuff that my colleagues do. You know, this live play thing that's happening with voice actors and stuff. I'm like, I still don't completely get it, but I love it, because holy cow, there's so many people coming in. And again, it's, as an industry, we have to, right? I worked for Gamma for a while. I was a part of the Gamma, the Game Manufacturers Association team. And whereas a lot of what was focused in other quarters of that job was, you know, how are we supporting manufacturers to give them the tools they need to be more efficient as manufacturers? How are we working with the distributors to create a good relationship between them and all of that was important, remains important. To me, the player base was my focus. Is like, what are we doing to get players excited about games and to buy more games because they want to bring more people to play and turn it into a vicious, beautiful circle. That remains a vital thing. That's why Sean's Pick of the Day is a thing. That's why I go to conventions and why I participate in panels, and I try to get in as many hybrid panels as possible, where I'm the gamer guy on a panel talking to not just gamers, but fantasy and science fiction fans and enthusiasts. That is my attempt to be an advocate for my hobby and for my media, amongst other media, to say this is a viable thing that I want to get you excited about, because without exciting new players and re-engaging previous fans, we die. There's nobody to sell to. I'll sell 12 books because that's all the fan base I have left. And we were headed there. We were headed to a point where a major publisher was lucky to sell 20 books.
Mm-hmm.
That's death. That's just absolute death for the hobby and for the industry. So we have to work at getting as many new people at the table as possible.
So I was going to ask the hard question of how we do that as a follow-up, and you touched on this a little bit. You talked about, you know, connecting to adjacent fandoms, fantasy, sci-fi readers, being on conventions in those spaces and talking about gaming and using that as a way to bring people in. But what other methods do we have to get people interested, invested, and involved in the hobby?
Active vocal advocacy in every venue that you possibly can. Conventions are a huge part of it. That's the gathering of the faithful, and going to not just strictly gaming conventions, but to media conventions. You know, there's an irony there, because I'm not really involved with the Denver Comic-Con, which is one of the biggest and fastest growing comic conventions in the country right now. But we've just not been able to get them engaged with the tabletop gaming community very well. We hope to see that shift. We're starting to see some internal conversations happen there, because that kind of space, you know, could be a perfect crossover opportunity. San Diego Comic-Con, I was actually a guest at San Diego Comic-Con quite a few years back, and I was there a couple of times as a gaming guest, but that door's kind of like closed now. Dragon Con. Dragon Con was started by the Dragons Alliance of Gamers and Role Players. I know this because I was a high-level member of Dragons Alliance of Gamers and Role Players. I helped start that convention. I wasn't the original staff. It was a gamers convention. Now gaming is a huge part of, but still is in the basement of one of the third level, the tertiary hotels. So it's literally back in the basement again. And it's frustrating, right? So it's a constant fight, but still it's there, and it should be there. And there are friends and colleagues of mine that go to Dragon Con and they still advocate. Finding other venues to advocate, right? Going to any kind of public space in which you can wear the colors and talk the talk. you know, festivals and things like that. It's, you know, it's as simple as being someplace and finding us and hearing somebody talk about The Expanse or some, you know, Firefly or something, and saying, you know, hey, that's pretty cool. Hey, did you know there's a Firefly role playing game? Oh, what? You know, just the little moments, right? It's those little one-to-one interactions that can sometimes be the most meaningful, because the thing is, if you get one person excited and they really want to do it, then inevitably there'll be at least 3 or 4 other people, because you don't have a game if you don't have a group. So just getting one spark lit means it's going to automatically spread out and grab 3 or 4 other people and get them, you know, get them excited as well. So that's as valuable as going to a big media event and talking to a whole bunch of people. But it's just a matter of you know, there we have this thing called, you know, read a gaming book in public day, you know, and that's fun. That's great, right? And people will take pictures of themselves. Do it. Take your D&D book. Take that gorgeous Middle Earth role playing, you know, the Adventures in Middle Earth game book.
From
right?
Cubicle 7. Yeah.
Oh, take especially the 5e one, because I have to say, getting Middle Earth into 5e stats, the most brilliant thing you could have possibly done, guys.
Yep.
And get those books out there, because people know Tolkien, so they're going to look at that and they're going to go, that's exciting. Get the Star Wars books out there. People see the Star Wars stuff, they go nuts. They love it. Take the Star Trek book out there for, you know, for sci-fi fans who like to read. Yeah, sure, whatever. Just take that book out there. Take that book out there and let people physically see that, because those things that do the media crossover are going to be the most engaging, right? A Star Wars fan is going to see that book and go, hey, what's that about? Yeah. A Star Trek fan is going to see that and go, what's that about? The Tolkien fan is going to say, and so on and so forth. You know, get those books out there, carry them around, be public about it, wear the shirts, right? Say, what does that mean, right? Be willing to talk, be willing to engage, because that is how we keep ourselves front and center as part of the wave of information that is flowing over people constantly. Make sure we're part of that. Make sure we're in people's faces and showing them, hey, this is cool, this is fun. There's really no other way to do it.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a different question related. How do we help engage people that want to be creators in the RPG industry? What do we do to help them, you know, excellent people, great voices, awesome stories, whatever it is that they're going to be bringing to the hobby? How do we get them involved in the industry, and how do we help them develop in the long term?
We don't, because I don't need the competition. Yeah, that's what I'm supposed to say if you're like a hardcore, you know, capitalist or whatever.
Right.
That's never been who we are. That's one of the reasons why there's, you know, guys like me and Shane Hensley and so many others who could be doing probably an order of magnitude better financially than we do in any other industry. I mean, people have said, why are you not selling like everything? Because you're like the ultimate salesman, Sean. You know, I am the guy who probably could go to Alaska and sell air conditioning units. In fact, I know for a fact I could, but I don't want to, because I love this industry. And part of what we love about this industry is that we are a big, huge friendly family. Now, some of us don't like family members, don't get along particularly well, but overall, you know, it's far more familial than it is competitive business. Advocacy and mentorship has been a part of this from the very beginning. I talked about Ray Greer, and I was also very good friends with the rest of the Hero Games guys, George McDonald, Steve Peterson, Bruce Harlick, Bill Robinson, that whole crew that was back there, you know, at that time. And then they introduced me to, you know, people like Hans Smith, Art Halsorian Games, and Greg Stafford, and you know, Chaosium, and all these guys. I got the chance to meet all those guys. But actually, you know, when I was first doing the initial research and stuff for the Fantasy Role Playing Gamers Bible, I got a chance to meet everybody, and it was incredible. And the thing is, all these people saw in me the energy and excitement and enthusiasm and creativity, and they were like, they went out of their way just to they wanted me there. And they made it clear to me that they wanted me there. It says, you have something to contribute. We want to include you. You know, they pushed. They said, okay, so write, right? You've shown us an outline that's fantastic. You've expressed these ideas. Now you got to just do it. You got to write. But they pushed me to do so. and they did everything in their power to help me. And they would introduce me to other publishers and like, here's a guy that we think's fantastic as a writer, and he's written some stuff for us. You should have him write for you as well. Even though that was a competitor, like Hero Games and Steve Jackson Games were both putting out a universal system core, right? GURPS versus Hero System. And the GURPS versus Hero System wars was a thing for a long time. Except it wasn't really a war. It was maybe amongst the fans, but it was never that way amongst the guys. I mean, Ray Greer worked for Steve Jackson for a while. Ray's the one that convinced Steve that when he published GURPS, he had to include the stats for guns, even though it was going to push the release of the book past when Steve wanted to get it out. He said, no, you've got to finish the gun stats and the armor stats for modern day, because it's not going to be a generic universal game. And Hero System is going to eat your lunch if you don't. And Ray was part of Hero Games, because that's who we are as a culture at the heart of it. The thing that you sometimes hear about in the background these days is the ones who are more iconoclastic and less want to play nice with others. The rest of us are like, yeah, tough, sucks to be you, because none of us are really going to do a whole lot to help you, because you've shown us that you reject that idea. Whereas, people talk to Shane, and he's like, why didn't you decide to just do Torg and Savage Worlds? He says, because I didn't want to, because I wanted my friends Ulysses Spiel to do their own thing. I want to see that in a revised version of those rules, because that's better to me, and I want to encourage that. That's fun to me, creatively, artistically. That is important to me. Never mind that monetarily, yeah, that could have been a huge thing for Pinnacle Entertainment, and it could have been a huge thing for Savage Worlds. That wasn't what mattered to Shane. What mattered to Shane is that his friends and the thing that he loved from when he first started, because he was one of the first creators for Torg, he wanted to see it expressed in a way that was useful and helpful to others and to the greater good, not just for himself, because that's the heart of what this industry and this hobby is. So when I was coming up and they were doing everything they could to help me, and I quite literally, like with tears streaming down my eyes, I'm like, guys, I love you. Thank you so much. What can I do to repay you for all that you've done for me? And they all kind of looked at each other and I said, do it for others. Find the next talented people and help them. And to this day, Ray and Steve, I don't see George very often, but I do still talk to Steve Peterson and Ray Greer a lot, and Bruce Harlick, and they're like, you're doing what we asked you to. You're constantly helping other people. You're constantly bringing in new people. Michael Serbrook, the guy who did the most recent version of Strike Force, the revision of Strike Force to honor Aaron Alston. Michael Serbrook Presents. He is someone that me and Ross Watson, who's off with Ulysses Spiel now doing the Warhammer 40K, the new one called Wrath and Glory. We both have been mentoring Serbrook and bringing him along, and now he's like a top talent, and we're proud of him, and we're grateful that we've had a chance to help elevate and encourage him further and bring him up, because that's who we are. That's who this industry is at its heart. We go out of our way to find others and work with them. And people like, how did you get Kevin Simbita to let you do Savage Rifts? Because Kevin and I are friends and we love each other, and he wanted to help me. He wanted me to write for him years ago, and it never really came together. So now that was a chance for us to work together, he was all about it. He was excited, because that's who we are. We find the people that we want to work with who are talented, and we just come in, be a part of us, do something exciting. I want to see the exciting thing that you do. Wow, look at what you just did. That's so cool. That's the drive. That's the passion. That's the thing that elevates us. And as we elevate another person, it does. A rising tide raises all ships. That's how we see it, and it does work that way. Nobody wants to see Dungeons and Dragons fail. No matter how much you may be doing the most anti-D&D game possible, you don't want to see Dungeons and Dragons fail, because that is the flagship. And the more people who love D&D, the more people are going to be in the hobby who then can turn around and maybe play something else. Nobody wants to see anybody fail. And when anybody stumbles, we all feel it. And we don't see it as a competitor who is getting out of our way. We see it as a fellow traveler that we must grab the hand of and lift up again. You've seen companies that were in deep trouble, and other companies step up and go, what can I do to help your company? I don't care that you're doing a competing product. What can I do to help you? I'm getting choked up because I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of our culture. So it's a natural instinct of us to reach out and mentor and find those talented people. So the only thing is, on the other end of it, is that person can't just be someone with ideas. They have to be somebody with the drive to take the idea and do something with it. That's the only barrier to anybody getting in this hobby right now, is can you do the work? If you can think, great. If you can write, great. If you can create in every way, great. If you're excited, go for it. But if you don't have the follow through, I can't do a thing for you. Sorry, I just started going on there, but
question though. It's tough because we're three white dudes sitting here, but I'm gonna ask this question because I think it needs to get asked. How do we ensure that women and that people of color that want to be involved in this industry also feel that same comradeship, that same support, to make sure that they are lifted up just as much as people that look a little bit more like us do as well?
Thank you so much for saying that. We still have a problem, but we're working on it. The last few years. By the way, you said earlier that you have a group that you're part of. I want to learn more about that, by the way. So offline, please send me links. I want to support that. And that's exactly it. Please send me your links so that I can then share it through my network, because that's how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
Those of us who care about this, those of us who recognize that our privilege has given us too much influence for too long, we have to be the ones that step up and go, it's time for us to stop this crap. And we have to shut down the whiners and the criers who are like, but that's not fair. Just because I'm a white hetero dude, now I'm being told I'm not welcome. No, you're not. You're just being told that in addition to your contributions, we need we need other voices.
Yep.
We don't need you to pretend that you're black. We don't need you to pretend that you're a woman. We actually need black people and Muslims and people of different cultures and different social experiences to be heard and a genuine voice brought in. We have to actively advocate for it. We have to actively go after it. And when we see an effort to do a project that is, we're specifically recruiting women for this project, we need to shut down the whiners who step up and go, that's just reverse discrimination. We have to shut them down. We have to say, no, it's not. This is trying to open the door up and actively advocate for other voices. You've had thousands of other projects that, if you look at the credits list, not a single voice in there was not a white hetero dude. So of those 1,000, if this one isn't about you, you have to accept that. And if you can't, we're going to make you shut up. And I hate to say it that way, but we have to be vociferous and advocate and push, because we are in a threshold space right now. And it's going to be a fight, because we're going to have those who are afraid that they're going to lose. They're going to somehow lose something. They're not. Mm-hmm. They don't understand that they're not losing anything, that there's no way there isn't going to still be crap tons of Western-driven, white, primarily male fantasy, whatever out there. It's going to be plenty of it. They're not going to lose anything, but they're afraid. Change is terrifying to them. And we're seeing it across media in every way, shape, or form. The Weinstein effect. Mm-hmm. Huge, massive, very painful. And it has hit us hard in our own hobby. We have to have this moment. We have to have this pain. We have to bleed, right? If somebody steps up from my past and says, Sean's Mr. Advocate, but I can remember a time when he talked inappropriately to me and it made me feel uncomfortable. I know I'm just going to say, this is a thing that I accept that happened. I don't remember necessarily the specifics, but I absolutely 100% believe that person. I have worked hard to be a better person in the years that have come. I beg forgiveness, and I beg you use this as an example of how we used to be and how we can't be anymore. If it happens, that's what I'm going to do, because there's nothing else we can do. We have to go through this pain, and we have to go through all the screaming and the wrangling and the fighting and the whining, and we have to shut down the whiners and tell them it is not going to not be your time, but it is also their time. We have to actively seek those other voices. We have to go to conventions, walk around the art show, see the artists that aren't white hetero dudes doing really great art. We have to look through the bookshelves, and we have to when we see someone of color, or we see someone of a different orientation or a different perspective than ours, and when we see them actively trying to find a space. No, we don't take somebody who has no ability to do anything and say, look, they're just as good as somebody else. But we do find the ones that want to try, and we give them that chance. And we let them try, and we actively welcome them. There's nothing else we can do. We can't just kind of sit around and wait and hope it happens. We have to actively go out there and hunt them down and go, come in. Yes, you. I want your voice in my book.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think that is if we have the privilege for it, our responsibility to go out there and try to make things better for everybody.
Hello. Speaking of new voices.
Speaking of very new voices, I guess everyone is coming to visit me right now. But I think we're actually getting to the end of our time. Quinn, if you want to grab the last question and start from there.
Yeah. First, before I do that, I do want to give some props to Sean right now. Just given that, I mean, people have heard me go on this show and other venues about the vision that we have for high-level games, and the entire concept is that we're this weird company that is out specifically designed to find people who have not necessarily been able to create in this space before, and build a community that can help each other bring that stuff in. And Sean, he really stepped up. I was at Gen Con and at a Savage Worlds licensee panel that I think we were both on together, and I stood up and I said, you know, this is what high-level games is all about. Everybody knows that game master or whatever, or creator or podcaster that, you know, just needs one more thing, or they're producing stuff that's nobody outside of the gaming group is going to see, and our mission is to try to find a way to help them to get their stuff out to people. And it was really meaningful to me that afterwards you came up to me and you were like, I'm really busy, but I just wanted to say this. Let's continue this conversation because this is what I have been doing since the beginning. And that very much came out in what the comments you just made. I do believe that we have a responsibility to all people who have any interest in this hobby to try to help them to be a part of this. And when the high-level games community certainly is about getting involved in creating things, and basically what we ask people to do is, once you're part of our community, we're going to help you any way we can to produce your stuff, and someday we're going to ask you to help somebody else out, and at that moment we'd just like you to say yes. And I think that if we can create this as the genesis of a movement that continues to make tabletop role-playing games into the inclusive and amazing and positive and solution-oriented community that at our best we already are, and that we always need to work on becoming as well, I think that that is, for me, the future, and that, for me, is the goal of this whole thing. But wrapping this up, I just want to say, you know, it is incredibly meaningful for me to be able to have these conversations with people that are within the industry. Sean, I've been a big fan of yours and your work for a long time, so
Thank you very much.
those of us that have been around for a few decades.
Oh, they're starting to feel a little decrepit now.
Yeah, I mean, as high-level games resident grognard, I definitely appreciate that some of the voices that have been around in the industry for a long time are very vocal, and I want to encourage everybody that they can to check out Evil Beagle Games, to buy their books, to check out one of my favorite, what is the title of it? The fantasy playing gamers Bible, that's Sean created. If you are interested at all in this hobby, please go out and get yourself a copy of that and read it. It's incredibly important. Watch for Freedom Squadron as it's coming up, and go out and buy the back catalog of Savage Riffs and play the hell out of it. We need more voices like this, and the only way that happens is that we support the voices that are already in our community that are doing this work. Check out also Josh's Reach Out Role-Playing Games and the Inclusive Games Network. I love being in partnership with Josh and the Inclusive Games Network because of the work they're doing, in that Josh is trying to use role-playing games to increase the amount of peace in the world, to bring people together, to build community. And if there's anything that we as a community need more of, is we need to demonstrate to those outside of our hobby and outside of our community that this hobby not only makes you better at being a nerd, but it also makes you a better person. In short, it'll make you a high-level gamer. See what I did there?
Ah, nice, nice. I want to make sure you guys we offline send me the links. I want to do a profile of high-level games and of your network, Josh.
Cool.
I'm going to do that as a special thing on Monday with my Sean's Pick of the Day broadcast kind of thing, because I really want to put some attention on what you guys are doing. Because Quinn, you're not wrong. I was very impressed with your presentation. It was unfortunately too small a room, so I want to get your voice out to more people, and I think I can help you guys with that. And Josh, I'm not allowed to say yes to anything anymore, but I don't care. I'm going to break the rule on that one. Find a way that I can help you with the Inclusivity Project. This is vital. I've been looking for a venue to put my voice in and put my efforts in to help in that quest. It sounds like you may be my chance to be a part of that, because I believe in that 100%. It's something that 4 white hetero guys of Evil Beagle Games have been talking about. We were painfully aware of the fact that we're 4 white hetero guys, and whereas we wanted to work together, and we're glad to be doing so. Our next step after we get our stuff together and get the projects we have on the table going forward is going out and finding more voices. So let this be my call to the world. I want your voice. If you have something, a perspective, a life that gives you a different set of perspectives than what I know, I need your voice in my products. And so this is Evil Beagle's official call to say, I want more women, I want more people of color, I want people of different orientations and different social and living experiences to bring their voice to my products and to our products, because we want to be a leader in that space. So there.
Yeah. So let's wrap things up, because we are a little bit over time. Let's end how we typically end, which is badly. And let's talk about, what are you reading right now? Josh, what are you reading right now?
So I hate to admit it, but I'm really not reading anything that's not specifically research material right now.
That's actually not a bad thing, Josh. That's a good thing.
Right. I am reading a few myths about New England. I have a lot of mythology and folklore books, because I'm writing something that is in a dark sort of universe where vampires and werewolves exist. Maybe that might be set in the New England-ish area. So that's what I'm working on. So that's the stuff I'm reading. So I don't have a book to hold up. That's just the type of stuff that I'm diving into at the moment. What about you, Sean? What are you reading right now?
Oh, I just wanted to say, actually, that it's interesting you say that, because Corinne, who's running the crew campaign, is doing exactly the same kind of reading, but for Colorado-based stuff, because she loves to focus on the local area. And since our crew team is based out of Colorado, she's got a crap ton, and friends of hers, that's one of the things they know to give her is mythology and legends and ghost story books and things like that about that. So I thought that's fascinating.
Nice.
I usually have 2 or 3 things I'm reading at one time. I just finished the most recent book finally in the David Weber Honor Harrington universe. God, was it Flames of Freedom? I can't remember. But it's the most recent book in the Honor Harrington series. Just finished that. I'm in the second book of the Aftermath series by Chuck Wendig, who I'm proud to say is a friend. But he's done some brilliant work with the Star Wars universe. And the fact is, I'm just so absolutely stoked to see how all in he went on the inclusivity, including a major pirate character who uses the pronoun Z, Zer and Z to be gender neutral.
Cool.
And he's gay couples, and one of the key heroes is gay, and it's just. I'm just so I'm Chuck. You're just I love Chuck, and I'm really enjoying. I'm like 3/4 of the way through the second one, Blood Debt, and then at the same time I've started this series. Local author and good friend Ian Thomas Healy. Where's it? There it is. So this is the first book in the Just Cause series. It's superhero fiction. That is a huge thing I'm into right now. I'm actually listening to an audiobook called Vanguard, which could be better, but I'm still enjoying it. But the Just Cause series is fascinating. I'm actually right now reading this one, which is set in the 70s, called Day of the Destroyer. And it's funny because Ian does an interesting thing. They're all superhero fiction. They're all set in the same universe, and they feature the same characters, but each book has a different kind of additional secondary theme. So this one's a little darker and grittier, and it deals with what life was actually like in the 70s with the narcissism and the drugs and all the other kind of stuff going on. And it also he says this one's a disaster movie done as a superhero novel, whereas this one's the other one was like an epic fantasy done as a superhero novel, and so he'll take another type of book. Anyway, Ian Thomas Healy, if you're at all interested in superhero fiction, yes, I'm totally pimping my friend because I'm really enjoying his work, and I think that would be fun.
Nice.
What I'm reading right now is right here.
Designers and Dragons.
Designers and Dragons. This is the second volume of a 4-volume set, but from the 80s. It's a history of the role-playing game universe, and it's by Shannon Appelkline and sold through Evil Hat Productions. And I've been really enjoying it. My academic background is in history, so a history of the role-playing game industry is really fascinating to me, and there has been several that are out there, but there's only so many times you can read about the history of the start of Dungeons and Dragons before you want to know about the other games. So it has been really interesting, and I've been really enjoying it. Other than that, I've been immersed in Star Trek lore for the last little while, which has included me watching episodes of DS9 with a notebook in hand. And
my favorite of the series.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
The world building in DS9 is the strongest world building you're going to find in Star Trek.
And the promise for the High Level Games Present Star Trek Adventures podcast is coming out is no matter what, we're pretty sure that we can produce something that's better than 60% of Voyager.
More shots fired. More shots fired.
I'm not usually this fighty. I don't know what's going on.
Well,
I can't argue with you though.
On that note, Quinn, why don't we talk about our newest member of our podcast affiliate network, and then
all right, I'll try not to be fighty anymore for the rest of this time. I do want to end this off by welcoming the newest member of our podcast affiliate network. These are podcasters that have joined the High Level Games community. Nerd Mantle out of Boston. In keeping with the High Level Games mission to try and get as much attention as possible to awesome people producing great content, find them. They're posted on the website at highlevelgames.ca/podcasting network. If you're interested in becoming part of our podcast affiliate network, send us a note on the contact section of our website or email us at hlgpodcast@gmail.com for further information. We're really excited about the growing podcast affiliate network and the work that we're doing to try to get their art and creativity out to more and more people. Welcome, Nerd Mantle.
Okay. So we like to end this show badly, but we like to end it by saying, let's level up. So if we can, on 3, 3, 2, 1.
Let's level up.
We're getting better at that, and it's kind of
better.
a bad ending.
It's all right. We can stumble now for a couple of words and still end badly. All right, everyone. Thanks very much.
Okay, bye.